Hello,
Hi, Khaled. How are you?
I'm doing great. What about yourself?
Excellent. I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. We'll just give it another 5 minutes or so before we make a start. I'm not sure how many people we've got joining us, so I will just hang on for a little while before we get going, if that's all right.
Sure.
Well, seeing as we don't seem to have anybody else joining us at the moment, I'm gonna make a start anyway. I'm recording the session if that's okay with everybody. I think there's only two of you here. Khalid and Mohammed, are you there as well?
Yes, it's from here.
Yes.
Hi, hello, how you doing?
Great, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, really well, thank you, really well.
Um,
And Manisha's just joined us as well. Okay, so I'll make a start and we may have others joining us as we go, but that's absolutely fine by me. As I've just said, I'm recording this session, so I will make sure that it's available to all learners. Today is we're on the personal effectiveness unit, so the unit 7C003, and we're looking at learning outcome 1 today. Okay, so I've earmarked 3 hours for this session, but we will, as always, see how we go. I would rather go through some of the theory quicker and then give us some time. 1 second, folks. Crazy dog alert. Sorry about that. I would, as always, I'd rather we go through the theory quite quickly and then we can spend some more time doing either one-to-ones or catching up individually on any questions that we've got. Can I just have a quick recap of where you're all up to? Because Khalid and Mohammed, I think you're on the same cohort. Are you both on cohort 4 or 3?
Yes, we're at 3.
You're 3, okay. And Manisha, I think you're on a late. Are you cohort 5?
Sorry, I've been driving, so I didn't hear the question. What is it?
That's okay. I just wondered which cohort you're in. When did you start your program?
6.
You're in 6. Great. Okay, fabulous. Couldn't remember if it was 5 or 6. So for Mohammed and Khaled, this will be you've already kind of had this. I think you've already had a lot of the content to do with the ethics learning outcome. Manisha, this will be brand new for you. So we're at different stages, which is fine, and we'll see how we get on. I'm surprised there's not more learners here. So if you do know any others that want to join, that you're on WhatsApp groups or whatever with, please do let them know. Otherwise, there will be the recording, which is fine. Okay, so has anybody got any thoughts, queries, challenges that they've faced so far on this particular learning outcome in terms of their knowledge gaps around ethics? So I will assume then I will just work through the materials that I've got, and just jump in if you've got queries and questions as we go. There's quite a lot within this, but there's an awful lot in terms of reading that I want to direct you to go away and read. This is one of the learning outcomes where there are some really core reports by the CIPD that will absolutely help structure and direct you in terms of answering these assessment criteria, but actually should form part of your core learning plan. So if you haven't already read them, I would expect them to be on your learning plan as part of your activities that you want to complete. Okay, so I will go through each of those as we get to them as it's appropriate, but a lot of this content really is about understanding the CIPD position, and understanding how you as a people professional need to be behaving and what knowledge, skills and behaviours you need to have underpinning your personal practice. So I'll direct you, as I say, to that reading as we go through. So this learning outcome then, this is about being able to model the principles and values that promote inclusivity aimed at maximising the contribution that people make to organisations. So it is very much the heart of the CIPD mantra of better work and working lives. It is about making sure that ethics, values, principles are embedded throughout what we do as people professionals. Okay, so the assessment criteria that are linked to this, there are 4 of them out of the total 15. So there's 4 different assessment criteria which are linked to this sort of topic of ethics. The first is to critically assess different ethical standpoints on people practice and the maintenance of high standards of ethical behaviour. So that's about knowing what different ethical standpoints there are, how they can be enacted, how people can perform those different ethical standpoints, and also how do you as a people professional maintain standards of ethical behaviour in terms of both upholding of organisational rules and your laws, but actually in terms of things, values like integrity. Okay, so it's wide ranging, but how do you make sure you understand the standpoints and then you maintain the standards? Okay, that's really what assessment criteria 1 is all about. The second one is about justifying business improvement in in relation to the promotion of fairness and transparency, well-being, employee voice and learning. Okay, so this is about how are you able to present a business case? Are you able to justify improvements to the business that relate to moral principles and values? Moral principles and values include the promotion of fairness and transparency, okay, so equality and diversity, well-being, so not just employee health, but overall well-being of everybody in the organisation, ensuring that they are looked after from both a physical and mental and emotional point of view, ensuring that employee voice is heard and that it interlinks with fairness and transparency and well-being, so that actually everybody has the opportunity to have their voice heard. And also in terms of learning, so how are you supporting and encouraging and role modeling learning for business improvement in your organisation? Okay, so that's really about saying, as a people professional, we need to be championing fairness and transparency, well-being, employee voice and learning. And how do we do that? Okay, what mechanisms do we use to promote those things and to drive business improvements in that area? The third one is about self-evaluating, so looking at your own personal and professional integrity in relation to ethical practice, professional courage and influence, and valuing people. So this is about, have you been able to look in the mirror and evaluate yourself in relation to these areas? So in terms of thinking about ethics, courage, influence and valuing people, are there times when you have reviewed your own practice, and if so, when and what did you find? So it's very much about doing a hard look at what it is in your role and when you've had to have courage to ensure that you are promoting inclusivity, that you're making sure everybody's included, and that you're modeling principles and values. Okay, the fourth assessment criteria, and the one that is slightly different and some learners struggling with a little bit, is about assessing the impact of collaboration across boundaries, including the value of embracing difference. So this is about being able to it's not about being able to collaborate across boundaries, it's about being able to assess the impact of collaborating across boundaries. So it's about measurement more than it is about the collaboration itself. It's about being able to recognise why difference is important in and out of organisational boundaries, and then being able to measure that to some extent. So a number of you may not work across geographic boundaries or cultural boundaries, but you are working across boundaries just in this course because you all work in different organisations. You are working across boundaries when you're working with other people in your business, because you're not all people professionals, so you will be working with other people. And it's also about this is very much about what assessing the impact of valuing the difference, if that makes sense. So it's about being able to demonstrate that you actively seek to collaborate across boundaries because you know the value that brings to your organisation, to you personally and to your organisation. So you can, using theory, make sure that you identify what the value is of diversity in an organisation, listening to different opinions, making sure other voices are heard, etc. So what I think you should be able to see, I hope you'll be able to see across these different assessment criteria is that, yes, ethics and values is very much there, but a lot of it, there's a lot of overlap here in terms of fairness, inclusivity, diversity, well-being, employee voice, and all of those aspects linked together. So there's quite a lot of overlap, okay, across these assessment criteria, as there should be under this one learning outcome. Okay. Nice to see you, you others that have joined. Hi, Claudel. Hi, Oksana. Nice to see you. Well, I can see your names anyway. Okay. Hi. So we'll move on. I just wanted to have a very brief pause and just remind you in terms of what we're seeking to do for the first parts of this, the first tasks within this unit. The self-assessment and learning plan is thinking about where you are now and where you want to be. And in terms of how you're going to go about that, where you are now, I would expect you all to have seen and used CIPD self-assessment tool, looked at and reviewed yourself against the professional standards. I would expect you to have looked at the core reading from these sessions that we have on the hub and in the study guide, and look at to see where your gaps in that knowledge are and the gaps in your skills are. I would expect you to, at the very least, to know what you don't know. Okay, so that's what your self-assessment bit is. It might not be terribly specific to your role, because sometimes you don't know how you can plan, how you can have a clear learning plan until you've done some more reading. Okay, so that your first bit is, what are your knowledge and skills gaps? So where do I not know things? For example, the CIPD has a range of documents relating to ethics, one of which is the professional standards, CIPD professional standards. These are a values-based, it's a values-based document that says this is how we expect people, professionals to behave. Okay. I would expect you all to have read that before today. I haven't pointed you to it. So that might be a knowledge gap. Actually, I don't know what Madeline's talking about. I don't know where that document is. Later on in the session, I will show you. But that needs to then be in your learning plan. Okay, so anything that you are learning towards these topics needs to be in your learning plan. Okay, so for now it's sufficient to say, I need to read more. I need to find out what I don't know. Okay. In terms of where you want to be, so the learning plan, what knowledge do you need to know? So what reading do you need to do? Courses do you need to take in addition to the CIPD units? Which CIPD units do you know will align to some of this? So, for example, well-being at work will absolutely link to this unit and this learning outcome. Now, for Khalid and Mohammed, that I think you're doing that more or less now, the well-being at work unit with Alison. I think for those of you in cohort 6, it's going to be a long while off before you get to that one. So it might be that in your learning plan, you're just literally saying, I need to wait a bit of time. You know, actually, that's an area that I will come to that later. Where are you going to try out what you have learned? So if you're identifying reading, for example, where are you then going to go and try out some of the skills that you've learned? Where are you going to give yourself some space for some structured reflection? Part of your learning plan needs to, you need to build in space, time, structures in order to reflect on what you've learned so far. Okay, so part of your learning plan is reflecting on your learning to date. Okay, and what behaviours will you be developing? How are you going to show them to others, or indeed influence other people to show them? So obviously at level 7, which we're at, I would expect it not just to be about you being a good people professional, but about you demonstrating to others, role modelling that good behaviour, those values to others. So how are you going to influence others, and how are you going to challenge others when they're not demonstrating the values that are expected of them? Okay, so it's just a bit of a reminder about the kinds of things that I will be looking for. This is also just a little memory aid memoir for you when you're completing your learning plans. Your development objectives should be the what and the why. So what do you need to do, and why do you need to do it? The learning plan will be how and when. Okay, so how in terms of the specific thing that you're going to do, and exactly when you're going to do it. Okay, so what do you need to learn and why, the development objectives, and the how and the when are the learning plan. Okay, because I know some people have sort of struggled with what bit goes in which area. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, I will march on. Okay, so we're looking then at ethics in terms of in people management, in people practice. We are looking particularly at how to achieve or how to work towards better work and working lives. And what that means in practice is it's about making sure that people are engaged in good work, which we will talk about what we mean by good work. It means that people who we work with have autonomy over their work, that they are treated with fairness, that there is open and transparent engagement with the people that we work with, that there is employee engagement and voice and an opportunity for everybody to be heard, that there is compassion, support for well-being across our organisations, and that we are able to offer a work-life balance. And that is not just a list that I've come up with off the top of my head. That is what CIPD are expecting us as people professionals to be doing in order to make sure that we are offering better work and working lives. Okay, really a lot of this comes down to making sure that everybody is included and that there is collaboration across the organisation. And why do you think we do that? Why do we want to, why is it important that there is inclusivity and collaboration?
To establish the reality, maybe.
To establish the reality, what do you mean by that?
A better agreement on the overall, better communication, let's say, agree on what needs to be done.
Yeah, and why would that be important? Why is that important?
It's important because it's unify the actions that needs to be taken, and everyone knows their position from the strategy, overall strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. So it links to the concepts around strategic HRM. Yes, there's got to be alignment, strategic alignment. You need, if you've got collaboration, it means that you're likely to have strategic alignment and everybody knows what they're doing and everybody's pulling in the same direction. So yes, absolutely. There are strategic, operational reasons why you want there to be inclusivity and collaboration. But there are also moral and ethical ones, which are actually, we want people to feel included. And we want people to collaborate because difference is good, inclusion is good, and that if we have everybody engaged and pulling in the same direction, it will be good for individuals and their well-being, and as a result of that, it will be good for the organisation. Yeah, happy people, happy organisations. That's really what it boils down to, is that actually if you have happy people, then there will be more productivity, yes, but actually also a happier society. So it's important. This is important stuff. Ethics is not just about not doing the wrong thing. It is also about trying our best to do the right thing. Okay. Okay, so what do we mean by in terms of morals and ethics? Well, there is a sort of a distinction that morals are about an individual code of right or wrong. So what are my personal morals? And ethics are a collective codes of right or wrong. So what do we collectively think of as being right or wrong? And that obviously it's very, very contextual. So morals, personal morals are completely subjective down to the individual. Ethics or ethical codes can be much more, much broader, but even they are very subjective. So they will change from country to country and in different contexts. When we think about the ethics, we quite often think about them in terms of different hierarchy. So there's different elements to ethics, and this is particularly useful when you're thinking about the assessment criteria 1, that first assessment criteria. So there's law. So law in terms of both the legal requirements, law and legislation of your country, of your region, but there's also sort of societal laws. So there's cultural laws or rules that are things that are expected of us that might not be exactly written down as law. You know, you wouldn't get arrested for them if you broke them, but they are just they're societal rules, they're expectations, and that's to do with culture, but it may also be to do with faith. So there obviously will be in certain countries and certain areas more faith-based laws that are expected to be followed by certain parts of the society dependent on their faith. At the organisational level, there's then the areas, the ethics around corporate social responsibility. So thinking about doing no harm as a business and trying to support your business to, where possible, do good and think beyond just shareholder value and move towards stakeholder value. The organisational culture makes a big difference. So whether or not it is quite a cutthroat business culture, or whether or not it is one where it is perhaps more focused on corporate social responsibility. And the values and behaviours of the organisation, we will look a little bit at some organisational culture models, but we cover them quite a lot in Unit 2, so I don't want to spend much time on that in this session. And then there's code of conduct and the kind of ethics, and that's really sort of the laid down, set out more rules, really, the processes, and that's about the expectations and what do we expect people to follow. So there are code of conduct might include things like your terms and condition along with your contract. So actually, in exchange for payment, what is expected of you? What are the rules by which you have to work? But there are also things around inclusivity and inclusion and diversity, and also employee voice. What are the mechanisms for listening to people? If you ask questions of people, do you then act on the feedback? There's quite a lot there in terms of employee voice and inclusion and diversity, and a lot of that then links through to the assessment criteria 2 and 3. Okay, so overall, it's good to think about actually, well, some of the things that we talk about in this session won't necessarily just fall into one area. It might be that they're in 2 different areas. So some of this is about absolutely set down laws that you mustn't break. Some of it is about expectations and culture, and some of this is much more organisationally specific, that you can say, well, actually, yeah, we do it like that. Maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't, and a bit more sort of subjective. Okay, so and actually this hierarchy it's in two ways. So people can influence their organisation and they can influence the society that they're in. Equally, the other way around, society can influence both us as individuals and also organisations. So we have a kind of ethical position. Each of us has an individual ethical position, and that influences the organisations we choose to work in, and the way we live our lives, really. So it's important to remember that this is, you know, it is subjective and it is very much context specific, but we as individuals do have choice. So we have choice about who we want to work with, where we want to live, how we want to communicate with others, within certain societal constraints and legal constraints. Okay. Okay, we're going to have a quick look at a couple of different examples now, and I'm going to use those to then talk about some theory. So in 2009, you will, I'm sure, be aware of this. Innocent Smoothies were a company that they made smoothies. They had these little bobble hats on there. I don't know if you had them in your country. We had them, they were very big in the UK. They had these funny little bobble hats on, but they were heralded as a healthy drink. Okay, so there was fruit smoothies, nothing bad in them. Okay, so they were all good, and they were about being a small, good for you, good for the world organisation. And then they were approached by Coca-Cola Company, and they sold 58% stake in their business to the Coca-Cola Company so that they could grow. Okay, their argument, or their argument was, the only way that we can grow is if we get investment, and we need to get more investment. And Coca-Cola Company is happy to invest in us, so we will take that money. Okay. Do you think that that was ethical? What are your thoughts on this one?
I think to some extent it could be, if Innocent stayed true to their own values and we were just accepting an investment, but not really embracing Coca-Cola's way of doing things, or adding more sugar to their drinks, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyone else have any thoughts? No? Okay, we'll have another look at another one. Similar sort of scenario, really. Body Shop. Body Shop in 2006. Body Shop was against animal testing. They were very strongly in favour of all natural products, was seen as a company that was for good, for the good of individuals and for the good of the planet. It was very much about being virtuous and green and sustainable. They were sold to the L'Oreal group, which is also part of the Nestle group. L'Oreal tests on animals. Nestle have been accused of many unethical practices over their long history. Do you think that was ethical? My dog doesn't. Do you think that's ethical?
Maybe not, because I guess if they were criticized for animal testing, and if Body Shop was really true to that, then they wouldn't consider an investment from a different organization who were opposed to their own values.
Anyone else got any thoughts on that? Agree or disagree?
No, I don't think
I
it's.
mean,
I'm sorry for joining late. I just finished the meeting and I turned to join from the call. Are you able to hear me?
only just. You're very faint and a little bit crackly.
Okay, I was just apologizing, joining late. I just finished the meeting and I'm trying to join
No problem.
in the call.
No problem.
Thank
That's absolutely fine. We're just having a look at a couple of ethical questions, really, to play devil's advocate. So I mean, I could say, but actually, how are companies like L'Oreal ever going to change unless they get involvement from companies who have got better ethics than them? Perhaps it would allow Body Shop to grow and expand their, as it says here, expand their ethical reach.
I don't think that it's ethical. It's not something ethical to practice. And I know a lot
Sorry,
of cases
Nina, I
about.
don't think we can't quite hear you.
Okay. How about now? Is it fine or is it still the same? It's fine. It's fine. I will just try to listen. No worries. I don't want to waste your time.
I didn't quite get that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was going to try and guess what you said, but I'm not going to, because it might be completely wrong. Okay, so there's different arguments on this. So I'm going to go through now a few different approaches, a few different arguments. So it may have been, so this is now called moral reasoning. It may have been that every individual director thought about their own personal gain from the deal. And they thought, well, I'm going to make plenty of money out of this. So that would be called egoism. So when an individual is only bothered about themselves, that's called egoism. It may be that the directors made a decision based on a specific deal on the table and thought about it in terms of how do they grow their product? How do they grow their ethical, values-based products quickly for the greatest number of people? That's known as utilitarianism, the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. So actually, this is doing good for as many people as possible. Okay, it might be that they were guided by universal principles of what is right and what is the right thing to do. And the context, it doesn't matter. Actually, it's about duty. Okay, so the deal on the table is irrelevant, and that would be called deontological ethics. Okay, so it might be that, you know, if one of the directors said, no, it doesn't matter how much money it is, it doesn't matter that it's Coca-Cola and that they can grow our project. Actually, the context is irrelevant. It's what actually is important is I need to grow this company, and so it's my duty to do that no matter what. That would be deontological ethics. It could be that each individual director has a very high personal moral value to act from their own sense of their own morals, their own internal moral compass, and that would be called virtue ethics. Okay, so the outcome could be the same or could be very, very different. We wouldn't necessarily know. we as outsiders looking in wouldn't necessarily know. Do they make the right ethical decision, do you think? The challenge with ethics, the challenge with morals, is it's very, very hard to say right decision. It's very difficult to say right decision. If we think about examples in the world of people practice, when we are making big redundancies, what do you think people, when if a company says we need to close down, we need to close down a part of our business because we're not making any money, and we need to get out of 100 members of staff, we need to lose 10, because otherwise we will go bust. What kind of moral reasoning is that?
The second one, the sorry, I can't pronounce it.
Utilitarianism is a horrible word, isn't it?
Yeah, that one.
Greatest happiness for the great could well be. Yeah, yeah. If we fire this 10, or if we make this 10 redundant now, we save 90. Yeah. However, can we think of examples where we've seen somebody saying, but I've got to look after everybody, so if we get rid of this 10 now, we're saving this 90, but at the same time that director's getting paid a lot of money, and you wonder whether or not actually they're just trying to cut costs so that they can get more profit.
But during the during the COVID time, we saw a lot of examples where directors actually took a pay cut, and a lot of CEOs who actually said, I'm going to give up my salary for a period of time just so that the company could go on longer.
Absolutely. And that's one where actually that could be argued in different ways, but yes, lots of examples of that where people just said, you know what, I can manage without for a while, let's make sure that everybody else gets the money first. Yeah, absolutely. And quite often that is then virtue ethics. That's when somebody is driven by their own personal moral compass and says, do you know what, I just want to do the right thing, and this is my own approach, my view. Yeah. So that's one way about looking at moral reasoning. There's other potential ways of looking at it, in different labels we can put on it. Deontological, so we've talked about that already. This is about duty. This is about people having a duty to serve. The ends don't justify the means. Is that, no matter what, we must behave in the right way. We must follow our duty. Teleology is actually the purpose overrides the cause. Okay, so ends justify the means, and that's very similar to the utilitarian approach. So the greatest good for the greatest number of people. It might be okay to make 10 people redundant because actually we're going to save 90. Yeah. Hedonism is actually what people can do what they like, and there are no set rules. For example, complete free market approach, no ethics, actually we behave however we want. There is very little hedonism or uncontrol or lack of control within businesses, mainly because actually we're guided by laws and legislation which keeps people in check. So, and then there could be hybrid approaches. Okay, so a big mix. And I'm just going to tackle the dog. Nelly, can you stop shouting at me, please? Thank you. hybrid approaches to moral reasoning and ethical philosophies. Okay, so there's various different terms, and I wanted to give you all these terms so that you have them and so that you can reflect back on them. When we are thinking about assessment criteria 1, we are thinking about different ethical standpoints on people practice and the maintenance of high standards of ethical behaviour. You may well want to use some of the language that we've just talked about, moral reasoning, different ethical philosophies, and how they apply in different contexts. Okay, so something that I think about often with regards to this is it's very difficult to have a concrete right thing to do. We're dealing with people and we're dealing with change. And when we're dealing with people and change, it is very challenging to know what the right thing to do. It's not necessarily, we're not necessarily dealing with absolutes. So we have got to look at different elements. So we have to look at what are the rules, first and foremost, what is the legal framework, what are the terms and conditions, and we have to look at fairness and transparency, and we have to make sure that what we're doing is underpinned by our ethical frame of reference. So the laws of the land, the rules of the organisation, and the code of conduct of our profession. They're kind of, if we can stick to those, then we are doing as good a job as we probably can. But there may well also be times where something doesn't sit right with you personally. Okay, and it's not against the rules, it's not against the law, it's just not right, and it doesn't feel right. And that's when we're talking about professional courage, okay, and having the confidence to then draw attention to that. Okay, anyone got any thoughts or questions as we get to that point? Okay, you may or may not be aware of an incident that happened in the UK. I think it was back last summer, I think. Of P&O, which is a ferry company. Does anybody know about P&O ferry company and the sackings, their redundancy announcement? Anyone aware of this one? Oh, I'll comment in the chat. Oh, hi, Mataj, I didn't know you were there. Okay, so what happened in a nutshell? What happened in a nutshell is that the P&O decided that we're going to make everybody redundant, and so text them. They didn't have a meeting, they just sent them a message and said, you're no longer employed. Do you think, well, we won't do the first one, but do you think their decision was justifiable? There is, I'm literally just briefly touching on this. There is, the whole case study is on the hub, and you can go to it and go through it and work through all of these questions. Do you think that that's, just on the basis of that, do you think that sounds like an ethical thing to do?
No.
I think it's a wrong approach. Absolutely.
Okay. What I would like you to do, and we won't do it in this session, but I'd like you to do it. I'd like you to go onto the hub and read that case. What I'd like you to do is to try and consider, if you were their HR advisor, a consultant working for P&O, what would you have told them beforehand and also afterwards? What feedback would you have given them? Okay, think about it in terms of, what would I have done differently? Okay, there will be, there are, I've seen it, there are some rationale, there is some rationale as to why they took the approach that they did, and I would like you to consider that and think about it. Was it justifiable? Could it be justifiable? To whom could it be justified? What might be the long-term impact of the way that they did it and their approach? And also, could they have done anything differently? Okay. I'd like you to spend a little bit of time on that. I'd like to spend, you know, I don't know, 40 minutes on that or so, jotting down some notes. And the reason I want you to do that, and the reason we take a little bit of time doing that, is because that is part of your learning plan for this assessment criteria. It is about demonstrating that you've understood those philosophical approaches and the moral reasoning, and you can apply it to that case. Okay, so in collecting evidence, I would like you to complete that activity. Okay, any questions? Okay.
Madeline, do you want us to go through all of the 4 questions?
Yes, please. I'd like
And
to
the
go
case
through those
study
4
itself.
questions. Yeah, I'd like to go through the 4 questions and think about. Sorry about that. I would, yes, please. I'd like to go through and think about it in terms of you being an HR consultant. What would you do? How would you have advised them? How would you advise them differently? And what would you, what might be the long-term impacts? Yeah, as an organisation. Really sorry, folks. Hello, folks. I'm ever sorry about that. Some sort of crazy squirrel attack. Where were we? Right. Yes. Okay. So that's what I would like you to do, and you can add that into your learning plan. Okay, in terms of activity or an evidence of something that you've done applying these theories. Right. Next, I'd like to sort of think about what areas we've got for you to focus on in terms of business ethics. So there's kind of a moral reasoning element, and then there's actually the applied business ethics. And I know some of you work in this area already. So these are things that will be very, very familiar to you in terms of things that you deal with every day. And for things where there are ethical considerations, but there may well be very, very clear rules that you are looking to apply on a day-to-day basis. There will be ethical considerations around anti-bribery and corruption, human rights issues, corporate governance, fair competition in your sector, in your country, around pay and equity of pay and transparency and bonuses, bonus structures, etc. Tax evasion, tax limitation, how it's paid, where it should be paid, technology and the use of technology, and also areas around GDP. Well, in the UK, it's known as, or has been known as, GDPR. It's not. It's called data protection. There we are. That's what I was looking for. Data protection, How are we collecting and using and retaining and destroying people's personal information? That's particularly important in all organisations. What are the speaking up mechanisms in your organisation and in your sector? So whistleblowing, for example, how do people raise concerns if there is an ethical issue, and how are they treated if they do raise those concerns? And then also fair treatment of employees. So how are we looking after our employees? That's not all of them by any means, but that's a few of them, a number of them that are you need to consider, or you could consider as part of these particular assessment criteria. This is a really, I think this is a really excellent paper that I would like you all to make sure you are read and have been familiar with. This, I've just taken this very short extracts from it. So the report is called HR Professionalism, What Do We Stand For? And it is a 2017 report which looks at how are we as people professionals influenced to make principled decision making, and what are the things that shape our ethical decision making. And it's about understanding that we have quite a unique role. People professionals have quite a unique role in organisations, in that we are positioned to understand and champion the sensitivities of human beings as whole human beings, not just as people who can make the business money. You know, we are there as almost an in-between bit. Can't think of a buffer between the organisation as a money-making machine and people as people, and we're there to try and smooth and make that work. Okay, so, and this diagram that I've taken from this report is about what are the things that influence us as individuals to demonstrate principled behaviours and decision making. And we may start with the intention to be principled and make principled decisions, and that is influenced by our personal characteristics. So think about that profession map. But it's also about our career history. Where have we come from? What organisations have we come from? Now, my background before I came into academia was in I did quite a lot of work in recruitment. I had quite a varied career, but a lot of it was very, very profit driven. It was important. It was more important to make the sale than it was to necessarily think about the longevity of it. So that, for example, would influence the way I think about ethics and ethical decision making. The organisational context itself is important. So what the context in which it is working, what is the sector, but also, is it making money at the moment? Are there pressures on it to make more money? Are things really tight, or actually is it in a period of growth? Is there a high innovation? Has it got a risk-taking propensity? And the perceived ability to influence others and influence the organisation. So those things factor in. That then kind of leads to what are our personal values, what's our professional identity, and what is the organisational identity. And that leads to our in-role identity. Okay, so who are we in our organisation? Are we there as the person with a stick to bash people over the head if they get it wrong? Or are we the person who is there with a carrot saying, please do things better? Okay, so actually, how do we perceive our role within the organisation? And that will also shape the way that we make decisions. Okay, I really encourage you to read this paper thoroughly and reflect on it, and reflect on what it means for you and what it means for you in terms of your in-role identity. Okay.
Can I ask you, Madeline, what is the name of this paper? If it is the Learning Hub or not?
It is down the bottom there. Oops, sorry, I've gone back forward one. It is HR Professionals, What Do We Stand For? Research report. It is on the CIPD website. If you just Google it, Murtada, I believe it is on the hub, but it is, if you just Google it, it is there. There's a link to it at the end of these slides as well.
I think it would be very nice to read it because I always people keep asking me this, I would call it loaded question. As an HR person, should you be with the company side or with the employee side? And
Absolutely.
And I always tell them that this is like an impossible to answer because we are in both sides. There is no way I'm going with the company against the employee or with the employee against the company.
And that links back to a question that you probably missed, but right at the beginning, it's about this. This learning outcome is about actually, it is happy people, happy organisation. You can't have one or the other.
Yeah.
If I am for the employees and I am supportive of the employees, we will have better retention, better performance, but better outcomes, and that will make for a better organisation. If I only ever think about profits and supporting the organisation and people are miserable, the organisation will not do very well. It might have some short-term wins, but it's unlikely to do well in the long term. So actually, you're right. It's having a foot in both camps, as it were, straddling the river and making sure that actually you are constantly, you're like the pivot on a seesaw. You have to try and weigh up the benefits of each. Yes, you need to make sure that the organisation is able to make decisions that make it efficient and can be, and you're adding value from that perspective, but not at the cost of human success and happiness and benefit. Yeah. Okay, folks, is it okay if we just take a very short break for 5 minutes so I can go and rid the garden of all squirrels and just make sure that I've not literally thrown my dog into the house and get myself a quick drink and come back at 10 past, is that okay?
Can I suggest something? If you can make it 15 minutes, because actually it is like prayer time here in Riyadh, so we can at least pray and then come back to the session, if possible.
That's great. Okay, that's wonderful.
you.
Let's make it we'll make it 1/4 then, and I will see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. give me a thumbs up or a wave when you're back, and then I know who's here, please. Thanks, Mina. Anyone else? If you can just give me a thumbs up or a wave or a note in the hello in the chat, just so I know you're back. Otherwise, it's me and Mina. That is me and Mina. Me and Mina, Mina and me. There should be a song about that, shouldn't there? Don't know why. Just feels like a song. Okay, I'm going to start again anyway, Mina. It might just be me and you. Who knows?
Okay with that?
Okie doke. Well, at least it's us, hey? Okay, so I just picking up from where we left off then. So we've talked a little bit about various different areas and aspects of workplace ethics. There are lots of areas where you will have an opportunity to demonstrate how you are behaving in an ethical way, or how at least ethics are being played out in your organisation and being able to evaluate them. So, you know, back at the beginning of the session, I said part of your sort of benchmarking exercises to look at where you are now. And when you're thinking about where you need to be, it's about thinking of ways that you can demonstrate knowledge, behaviour and skills. So here are some of the ways that you might be able to influence ethics within your organisation. It might be around organisational values, so the culture of the organisation. There may be a very specific code of ethics and ethical practice that has to be followed. I know, Mina, and I think Oksana, you are very heavily involved in that, so you would know all about that. How does your organisation, how do you personally reward good behaviour and remove bad behaviour? What communication channels what do they say about ethics and ethical behaviour? What does training say about ethics and ethical behaviour? Job design, recruitment, performance management, blah, 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 blah. Lots of different ways that you can look at implementing ethics through your organisation. And equally, some questions that I've put up here, some strategic questions to start thinking about actually what are the ethics in where I work and how might they be transformed, improved, changed? What is the purpose of your organisation? What is it there for? Is it there purely to make money, or is it there for social good? Is it there to do both? Is it there because it is a requirement of the government, or because it is has seen an opportunity in the market? And what does that mean in terms of work ethics? Is it owned by an owner, or are there various different stakeholders? And what's that power mix look like? Who controls? Who makes the decisions? Who holds the power? Who decides what's fair and what's not fair? If you've got very clear policies on fairness and equity, or is it a case of actually somebody gets to decide what's fair and what's not? How much transparency is there? When there is compassion, to whom is it shown and how much? I know this was a big challenge during COVID, about showing compassion to employees who had been bereaved through the COVID. Actually, you know, at the beginning of COVID, it might have been a case of organisations wanting to demonstrate a lot of compassion to people who'd lost loved ones during the pandemic. But there was also a sense that, well, yeah, but if we do it for one, we've got to do it for all. And if this gets as bad as it might get, and we can't afford to let that many people have that much time off. I know there was certainly something within an organisation in the UK where they had to be really clear early on about what bereavement, they had to change their bereavement leave policy, because it was that you could have a week off for anybody who was a close family member, and you could decide who that close family member was. So, you know, you didn't have to have proof or evidence. And actually that the organisation had to change that policy really quickly at the beginning of the pandemic, because they realised that it could mean that everybody in the organisation was going to be off for a long time. So, but it's interesting to think about compassion and who's just compassion gets shown towards. Do you feel that you work for with a socially responsible employer? Do they have corporate social responsibility policies and pledges, and do they stick to them? Are they lived? What employee voice mechanisms are there? How much employee voice is reasonable and expected? Do you feel that your organisation offers careers, or does it offer jobs? Do you feel that you work for a paternal employer who looks after you? Do you feel that actually you have the option to move wherever you want out of your organisation and not feel that you're being controlled in any way, or not? So just some thoughts about various different elements and strands of ethics that you will perhaps want to consider as part of this first assessment criteria. And I mentioned it already, but I will mention it again. There are CIPD code, there is a code of conduct, and you may well not have seen this. This was only released in January 2023. And at the heart of this, it is driven by 5 key virtues. So you can see that this is virtues ethics. So that's a theory that you can include in your assignment, and you can refer to the code of conduct. Okay. And at the heart of the code of conduct, there are 5 key virtues, and they are that as a people professional, we will have a positive and active impact on working lives. So it is not about being passive. It is about actively making a positive impact on working lives. That we have civic virtue and stewardship. We will demonstrate, that means we will demonstrate that we are looking after the people in our organisation. We are driving it. We will have good character, and what that means. We will demonstrate that we offer professional service and competence. We're good at what we do, and we offer professional service. And we take personal responsibility. If we mess up, we are accountable. Okay, so you can see how actually this code of conduct overlaps very strongly with the profession map, but it is not the same. Okay, so you will want to become familiar with this as part of your assignment as well, as part of your learning. So if you didn't know that this existed, this now needs to go onto your learning plan as something that you need to read and become familiar with and apply. You know, just have it as a tool that you can apply to your work and work in practice. Okay. Has anybody seen that before? Anybody looked at that?
For me, it's the first time.
No, yeah. Yeah. It's not a difficult read, but it is worth getting your head around and making sure you're aware of it. Okay, let's move then on to assessment criteria 2. We will speed up as we go through these assessment criteria. I appreciate we're well over nearly an hour and a half, so half the session gone on just one assessment criteria, but they overlap. So assessment criteria 2, you need to be able to justify business improvements in relation to the promotion of fairness and transparency, well-being, employee voice and learning. A big focus of this assessment criteria is about how you promote better work, and therefore we need to understand what we mean by better work and good work. Okay, so it's about showing how you contribute to business improvement, fairness, transparency, well-being, employee voice, learning on an individual basis, and learning from an organisational basis. Okay, and we will we'll go through each of these, but really what I want to focus on is the idea of good work and better work. Okay, it is worth reminding yourself when we're doing this and when you're doing your assignment that it's a lot of this is about reasonable. So we talk about it a lot in terms of reasonable adjustments for people, reasonable behaviour. It is about being logical and sensible, being as fair as possible. It's about being a reasonable, taking a reasonable approach. Okay. The reason that this is in here is this is not about being radical. Okay, so the opposite would be us to be radical in terms of, you know, we are going out there and we're trying to rip up the rules and change things so that everybody's working life is a million times better. We're not. We've got that foot in both camps. Yeah, it's about being reasonable. It's about making sure that people are have as fair as much as possible. It is equal as much as possible. It is your decision making is transparent as much as possible, but it's not absolutely radical. It's not about ripping up the rule book and saying, do you know what, we're going to do everything for the good and we're going to change into a cooperative and everybody gets double pay. It's not that. It is about saying, actually, we behave in a reasonable way, which we are able to evidence our decision making. It is moderate and it is fair. Okay.
Can I argue with this?
Sorry?
Can I argue with this?
You can argue with it, yeah.
I think somehow this word contradict with the word fairness. Sometimes when you are fair to one side over the other, you may not sound reasonable. I think it complements the word fairness. So if you want to be fair with one side over the other, either it is the organization side or the employee side, you need at least to be reasonable in the approach that you are taking any kind of conversation into it. What do you think?
Yeah, I do get you. I'm just thinking through it. I think I take reasonable in this sense. You know, the 3 pillars of the profession map: evidence-based, principles-led. That's what I mean by reasonable. Whatever we are doing, we are presenting a reasoned judgment. So we are saying, actually, sometimes it might not feel fair to everybody, and sometimes objectively it won't be fair to everybody, because it's not always possible for everybody to have exactly the same treatment, but it is on the basis of it being reasonable. So if I give you an example, one of the if we think about reasonable adjustments, so reasonable adjustments are adjustments that will be made for anybody who has a physical, mental, or emotional disability that prevents them doing the work in the same way as other people. Every employer within the UK is legally obliged to make reasonable adjustments for those people. So, for example, you recruit somebody who has perfect example. My friend is currently going through a bit of a legal battle. She has multiple sclerosis. Her multiple sclerosis is generally, she's very fit and well. However, sometimes she really struggles. She has a flare-up of her symptoms and it prevents her, she has mobility issues. She struggles to walk. Her organisation placed her in an office that had no lift, and they placed her on the 3rd floor of the building. Now, she said, right now, that's okay. But actually, if I am unwell and I need to I'm not going to be able to do that with my mobility issues. Legally, they had to make reasonable adjustments for her. Now, what that meant is she got to work in another office, which was actually much nicer, nearer to town, a nicer place to work. Nobody else, it wasn't fair because not everybody got that, but it was reasonable. It was reasonable given her context on the basis of her needs, that's what she got. Okay, so that's where so reasonable adjustments is a good example of reasonable behavior, reasonable application of rules. It's not about it necessarily always being fair. It is about it being evidence-based, appropriate and moderate.
I get you now. Thank you.
Okay, this is another one where if you have not read this, you need to read it. It needs to go on your learning plan as a key document for your own development. Okay, now this is called, just known as the Taylor Review in the UK. This is a report written by Taylor and colleagues on reviewing modern working practices, and it is about it's from 2017, and it is about considering what we mean by good work. Okay, what do people in the people profession mean by good work? Khalid.
Yes, I do have a question. It's related to well-being. So if a company conduct a well-being survey and result came, some of them are concerning, some of them are positive. During the next step, the type of communication to the top management and to the employee should it be different, or a company should only show the highlight of the survey? This is also talking about bringing the subject of ethics in this. Should the company prevail every single information or outcome from that survey, or should only show it as a bit size, let's say, information? This is where we at in terms of this category, and this is where we concern about. Do we show benchmarking? Do we show? So yeah.
Okay, so there's tons in there. It's a really great example, Khalid, of something which is an ethical dilemma that and this, it absolutely links to this assessment criteria. So thank you for bringing it up now. My answer would be, if you have done a survey, it is your duty to report the findings of that survey to the participants of that survey. That is a moral obligation. Yeah. So if you ask people questions, unless you've told them in advance, I'm not going to tell you what the outcomes of this are, you've got a moral obligation, I would argue, that you share the findings of your research with the participants of the research. So if you've asked all employees, what do they think about well-being, you need to tell them what your findings were. But you need to do it in a way that protects them. So it needs to be anonymous, so that no single person will be singled out, no individual will be singled out, and it needs to be in a way that nobody is identified with their views. So it might be that your analysis only shows numbers, or your analysis shows themes with no specific individual people's comments. From a management perspective, actually they need to be showing everything. There needs to be transparency of those results. So if the results are awful and it says we hate working here, then actually the management of the organization need to own that and say, you've told us that you think it's awful working here, and here's what we're going to do about it. So my sort of short answer is yes, there is a responsibility, if you collect people's opinions, that you then feed the information back, but you do it in a way that protects the individuals. Okay, so if you asked 10 people from accounting whether or not they liked working here, and 8 people did, and 2 people said, no, we hate it because we can't stand our boss, you need to be very careful about how you report that, so that they then don't get any repercussions from their boss for saying that they don't like them.
I got that.
Make sense?
It just, one more question. Sorry about this, everyone. I'm taking
No,
some.
don't apologise. No.
The majority of the employees company, they work in a remote areas. So let's say 2,000 of them. The remote areas, tackling well-being in a remote area is very hard in terms of initiating best practices, from happiness to well-being to even other factors. So if the majority of the employees are in a remote area, and their answer is somehow negative, do we need to re-question the survey itself? Or do we need to take action based on a demography of the location of the individuals? Because in reality, in head offices, everyone seems to be happy, everyone seems to be emotionally and financially happy, but the majority of staff are working in remote areas, and whatever question you put in their way, there will always be a negative side of it. So how do we say it? Do we say, okay, the people that works in remote area, no matter what you do, they will always be emotional about their answers?
I would say that at the moment, on the basis of the questions you've asked, at the moment they appear to not be happy. It might be that you're asking the wrong questions. It might be that they're not happy. You don't know. So actually, that's then a new piece of research. In terms of the way you feed that back, it could be that those that are working in remote places don't appear to be as happy as the people at head office. Okay, well, then we need to do more research to find out why.
Correct.
Because actually, if it's a very different role, then it would be unusual to want to ask the same questions. So, you know, it's absolutely fine to ask different questions of people who've got different roles or different ways of being engaged, etc.
This is a good one, Madeleine. So every category or every level an employee should have their own survey. Is that what you're saying?
No, not necessarily, not necessarily, but I am saying that actually when you're talking about employee voice, it's not just one way. You know, employee voice is about listening to people in lots of different ways. So a survey where they tick a box and say, are you happy or not happy, might be fine for everybody in head office because you see them all the time and they're all okay and everybody's, you know, there's lots of people who are on an outpost somewhere. They're already a sense of distance. They may not want to get a survey. They might want somebody to go and see them. They might want to have their employee voice heard through a different type of forum. So it depends if you're looking at employee well-being. You've used one tool and you've got some answers. That in itself is very, very interesting because then you can do further analysis, further research. But if you're looking at employee voice more broadly, actually you need to try different things, because actually if all you're getting back is we're not happy but we're not telling you why, you need to ask different questions.
Thank you, Madeleine.
Yeah. Okay, so this report, for those that aren't aware of it, as I say, this is a very important report that really outlines what we mean by good work, and it has supported CIPD to come up with their own definition of what they mean by good work. Good work, according to CIPD, is fairly rewarded. So the remuneration and the reward package is fair. It gives people the means to securely make a living. So it is about security and about job security, not feeling a threat, but also that salary can be sustained, or that income can be sustained. It gives opportunities to develop skills in a career, and ideally provides a sense of fulfillment. So this is what good work is all about. So it gives opportunities to develop and gives a sense of fulfillment. It provides a supportive environment with constructive relationships. So the relationships, the leadership, the management of people is done in a constructive way. So feedback is available, but it's constructive. The environment in which people are working is supportive. The culture is not toxic. It is a supportive environment. Good work allows for a work-life balance, whatever that means to individuals. Okay. Good work enables staff to be physically and mentally healthy. So it means that well-being, physical and emotional well-being is taken care of, is considered. It gives employees the voice and choice they need to shape their working lives. Okay, so it allows people to feel empowered in their work, and it should be accessible to all. So there should be no barriers to the work. Okay. It's quite a tall order, that, isn't it?
Can we say this is like the perfect definition of good work, or this is reasonable definition of good work?
This is the CIPD definition of what good work is, and CIPD say that all organisations should be striving to ensure good work. As a people professional, you should be promoting good work. Okay, so it's about a journey, not you know, it's not necessarily that we are all at this destination, but it is about championing better work and working lives. Yeah, so as a people professional, you should be championing this good work. It's not that it's there all the time, but these are the areas that you should be working towards.
However, the impact of championing this without seeing an actual result will have a huge impact on the disengagement of the employees, right? Because they would say that no matter what you speak, Mutara, about good work, we still don't see any kind of changes. So you keep talking and talking and talking, and nothing is changing. So I think it has like a negative impact on that.
You're not putting this on a poster in the wall. You know, this isn't something you know, you don't print this out and put it on the door of the office and say, this is what I'm doing. This is what you just get on with. Yeah. So it is not about us saying we as people professionals offer all of this wonderful stuff, because the reality is half of this stuff we can't control. We can't ensure every single time, unless we're running the business. We're not in control of all these things, but what we can do is make a commitment to it internally and look for opportunities to change, look for opportunities to develop. You know, so we don't go, I wouldn't say, right, everybody needs to go into work tomorrow and promise that their employees will all get a work-life balance, because that's just not realistic. But it does mean that in your strategic meetings in your organisation, you need to be thinking about, I wonder whether or not work-life balance is something that we could bring into this particular area. I wonder if as we're doing this job redesign, we can think about development of skills and career. I wonder if we can, you know, as we're bringing people in, can we make sure that we're recruiting people who are going to create a supporting environment with constructive relationships. So it's as you're developing things, it's making sure that you have these things in your mind so that change happens over time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just remembered that one of the organizations I worked with, we had like a manager charter. The manager charter, which is like 1 page tall, has a lot of items in it, and it is basically delivered to all of the managers. They need to sign it. So this is what you should be doing as a manager. And you need to reflect it on the team that you are managing. So I think somehow what you are saying is similar to that.
It's similar to that. It's about actually saying, you know, this is what we're striving for as people professionals. This is, you know, if we think we are, well, we say that we are championing better work and working lives. What does that mean? Well, it means this. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. I'm going to skip that because I don't want to run out of time, but we might come back to it at the end. Okay, so let's have a look now at assessment criteria 3. This is about being able to self-evaluate personal and professional integrity in relation to ethical practice, professional courage and influence, and valuing people. This is about you showing how you are a role model of integrity, okay? How you demonstrate integrity. And what we mean by that is your personal integrity, okay? So it's a hard one to define, but I define it as doing the right thing even when no one's watching. Okay, personal integrity, doing the right thing even when no one's watching. Yeah, or I think the way I've described it previously is doing the right thing and doing it well. So it's not just enough to, you know, an example of you don't try and get away with things. You don't try and do the bare minimum. You do things right and you do things properly. Even if no one's going to necessarily notice, you still do it. Okay, that's personal integrity. Professional integrity in relation to ethical practice. So when there is an ethical dilemma, you are able to demonstrate professional integrity. So think of a time when your personal or professional integrity was called into question, and what did you do? Okay, it's very hard for this assessment criteria to think about or to have many areas of development in terms of your learning plan, because actually how do you build up your skills of personal integrity, professional integrity? I would suggest that this is about role modeling it for others, so finding opportunities of when you're going to display it, but it is also about how you demonstrate your influence over others and how you demonstrate how you value people. So have you got examples, or can you create opportunities where you can demonstrate professional courage, influence and valuing people? And how do you do that? Okay. A lot of the there's a lot of overlap with the first assessment criteria for this one in terms of your reading, but one thing that I would strongly recommend that you read is, let me just find it. It's that one, and okay, here we go. I will just put these into the chat as well. So that you have them. There we go. That's the one I was looking for. So I've just pinged into the chat three different links, and they are all worth a look. In addition to that, I would very strongly recommend that you read this. This is a 2019 report from CIPD, which is about looking at unethical workplace behaviour. And the reason that this is so useful is it talks about, well, it gives the metaphor of rotten apples, bad barrels and sticky situation. Rotten apples being individuals who aren't great, who behave unethically. Yeah. So sometimes we work with people who are unethical. What do we do about that? And it talks within this paper about the triad of sort of dark characteristics. So narcissism, psychopathy, and the third one, which I can't remember off the top of my head. But it talks about actually how do we deal with people who are unethical, who are hard to work with? What do we do? Well, how do we approach it? What are the challenges? So that's the rotten apples part. The sticky situations is actually how do we work in organisations, sorry, bad barrels, how do we work in organisations which have a culture of unethical behaviour? What do we do if we're working in a culture which is toxic, which covers things up, which is not fair? What actually, as people professionals, what do we do? And sticky situations, which is the more common one, where the place is good, nobody is particularly bad, but something kind of niggly comes up, and how do we deal with it? How do we deal with something that pops up, an unethical situation? And there are lots of examples within this. So here we are. Rotten apples, individual differences in unethical behaviour. Bad barrels, culture, climate and leadership, and sticky situations, and what do we do about them? Okay, and it's got examples there of things that you might like to do, things that you as a people professional could tackle. I would strongly recommend that you read this in relation to assessment criteria 3. Okay, the other links that I've just put through, HR and business ethics within as a podcast. This is really about, actually, is it our job to be the conscience of the organisation? Could we, should we, will we? The changing contours of fairness. So through theoretical perspectives, looking at actually what do we mean by fair and reasonable. So that's a great one. So that's looking at things like, well, what do we mean by fairness in terms of female representation on boards in organisations? What do we mean in terms of equality versus equity versus diversity? What's important? Is it about everybody being the same, or is it about recognising that people are different and dealing with them in different ways? So there's a number of different perspectives on that, and that is a really great read. Oh, and then there's some examples of ethical decision making within the workplace. So a number of different ethical dilemmas and understanding them. If you were to use those 4 documents or those 3 documents in a podcast as all of your reading and your learning for this assessment criteria, that would be plenty. Okay, that would be loads. All right, so it's not, I'm not asking you to go away and read everything in the world. You don't probably even need to attack a single journal article for this assessment criteria. That would give you a wealth of examples and understanding to be able to then apply to your own workplace. Okay. Okay. Right.
Excuse me, Madeline, I've just added to the chat the link to the report you just mentioned about the rotten
Brilliant.
apple, bad barrels, and
Rotten apple
sticky
one, that's
situations.
wonderful. Thank you very much. That's great. Okay. So back, oh, let me just do that a moment. Okay, so that's assessment criteria 3. I told you we'd speed up as we went along. So the next one then, assessment criteria 4. This is about being able to, as I say, assess the impact of collaboration across assess the impact of collaboration across cultural, geographic, and professional boundaries, including the value of embracing difference. Show how you collaborate. That's what we're after here. We are after examples of how you collaborate. Various different things that might be useful within this, and I think I've linked to some of these within your within the extended study plan for you to think about in terms of barriers or causes of non-collaboration. Quite often, collaboration doesn't happen because of fear or stereotyping. Fear because people don't like change. Okay, so it might be that you want to look at various different change models. You could look at either ways of managing change, so things like Lewin's 3-step change model, or which is always quite a nice and a simple one, or oh gosh, the 7-step change model. Author I can't remember right this second. Or you could look at things like the Kubler-Ross change curve, how people experience change. So within that is fear and denial. Actually, how do people experience it, and what are those barriers to changing? The second cause of non-collaboration is around stereotyping. So people often are frightened of working with people from across borders, and I don't mean literally borders as in country geographic borders. I mean people don't want to work with IT, or people don't want to work with you know, the sales department that's down in the office down the road. There, because there's a stereotype, there is a sense that they are different, and people are frightened of difference. So actually you might want to investigate that. Cognitive dissonance. So if people have a thought in their head that something's going to be a certain way, and it is not that way, that causes cognitive dissonance. Okay, and people then want to be able to explain things away. It's not a very good example. We don't like it when things don't make sense to us. So if we've got a strongly held belief about something, it takes quite a lot for us to change our mind on it. Okay, and we need to be able to support people to change their mind on it. Okay, halos and horns. Have you heard horns and halos theory? I think I've explained it. I know I've talked about it within Unit 2, I think. Quite often we see people as we like people, we see people as similar to us, and we think of them as having a halo. They can do no wrong. Every time we talk about them, oh, my boss is amazing, my boss is great, my boss is incredible, oh yeah, he's giving me a pay rise, yeah, it's all so wonderful. And then they do one thing, and suddenly we stop liking them when we see them as the devil. So we then have they've got horns. So from being the angel and doing no wrong, they've now become the devil. Oh well, my boss has said this about me, my boss has done that. Now actually the boss's behavior probably hasn't changed much, but our view has. And so that might be a cause of non-collaboration. Something happened, and that it was a complete shift. There was a shift in perception of that person. It might be that people are coming at something from a completely different frame of reference. Now, this is something that I think is particularly pertinent when you've got international collaboration. A frame of reference may be actually working, ways of working. Now, I quite often I get emails on a Sunday from learners, and when I first used to get emails on a Sunday, my instinct was to go, they contact me on a Sunday. I can't believe they contact me on a Sunday. And it's taken me a while to not have that instinctive reaction, because actually that were contacting me, it was working day. It was a working day. My frame of reference is that Sunday is not a working day, ever. So I was thinking, I can't believe they've how dare they contact me on a Sunday? That's my frame of reference. So actually, and it doesn't take much. I've challenged that and gone, oh no, of course it's working day. Yeah, doesn't. Yeah. So I have to challenge myself all the time with working with different people and making sure that I'm thinking through, okay, this is not about my frame of reference, this is about their frame of reference. How are they coming to me with this stuff? Okay. It might simply be lack of awareness. It might be that you're wanting to work with people and they haven't got a clue. Sometimes we forget to tell people that we want to do something. Change initiatives is always one where people within the change team think that because they're so involved in it, oh, but we've been implementing this new IT system. I've been working on this for 2 years and nobody seems to know about it. Well, it's because you haven't told anybody. Yes, we have. We sent out that email. I get 400 emails a week. Yeah, actually, we forget sometimes that just because we have awareness of something doesn't mean other people have. It might be lack of resources. People haven't got time, energy, money to actually get on board with something. So when you're thinking about this particular assessment criteria, what you need to be thinking about are what are the causes of non-collaboration and how do you get over them? How do you work with people across whatever boundaries there are, whether that's geographic, professional or whatever boundaries, thinking about some of these things. Oh, there was a time when I needed to work with these people and they didn't want to work with me. What I worked out was what the barriers to working with them were, what the causes of non-collaboration were, and this is how I overcame them. Okay, and the impact of doing that was that we managed to work better, differently, whatever. I would ask you to challenge yourself on this one and think about how you can work with people that you wouldn't normally. So if you have got a new initiative or a new project or something coming up in the next, however long, next few months, how can you engage a broader range of voices? How can you increase your stakeholders in that and seek more collaboration? Because that is, if you're involving more people, you are automatically going to be collaborating further and therefore meeting the requirements of this assessment criteria, but it is also then also engaging more voices in whatever it is you're doing, which is positive. Okay.
Do you still want us to send you emails on Sunday, or shall we start sending it on Monday?
You send them on Sunday. It's absolutely fine. I don't do anything with them till Monday. They can just sit there in my inbox. That was what was so funny about it, Matada. I was getting annoyed with it. It didn't actually impact me at all. Okay, more exercises that I'm not going to spend time on today because we're marching through on the time, and I think that I personally think that 2 and a bit hours of me talking is plenty. There's 2 more activities, 2 more exercises that are within the slides, which are on the hub. One is thinking about an activity where a particular person is in an organisation and they are they're threatened with the sack, and what do you think about it? So that's really linking to assessment criteria 1. I've also got a load of examples here about different ways of recruiting people, bringing people into the organisation, and it would be very useful for you to think about these in terms of, are they justified, and are they justified on the grounds of your organisation? Are they just justified in terms of ethics, or also the law of your country? And when I say the law of your country, I do mean literally the law of your country, but also the UK. Because when you are answering these questions, if you're relating anything to particularly around employment law, CIPD is a UK-based organisation and they expect you to have an understanding of UK employment law from that perspective. Okay. So it's worth having, I would say it's worth having a look at those. Do you want to have a look? We can go through some of those now. Is that useful?
Yes, please, because I think it will be very difficult.
Okay, so let's have a look at then. We'll start with the first one. We'll go through a few of these. We think there will be a lot of interest in this junior administrative post, so we will make it essential for the candidate to have previous administrative experience. Is that justified?
I think somehow it is reasonable, but at the end of the day, it's an admin work. So essentially you wouldn't need like too much experience. You can bring a fresh graduate to do that. And again, it depends if we have a law that say to us in the advert that you are not allowed to mention certain number of years of experience in the post.
Anyone else got any thoughts on this? It's just me and you, Matada.
They are trying to get their heads around this topic. I wouldn't blame them, to be honest. I'm trying to be collaborative and not biased as much as possible. Again, it's
So
fine.
I would say
They will get the
I would
benefit out
say,
of the recording.
what's the rationale for saying, let's make it essential that they have previous experience? Why would you do that?
Usually, because a lot of managers, they don't want to spend time to train people. They just want somebody who is ready on the go. Just give them the task, let them do it. I don't have time to train my employees or to give them guidance. So it's actually a manager problem.
If I was the HR business partner and a manager said to me, we want a junior administrative post, so we'll make it essential for the candidate to have previous admin experience, I'd say, well, then in that case, you want an administrative post, senior administrative post. If you're asking for someone with experience and you need someone with experience, then it's a senior administrative post. If it is a junior administrative post, then you need to allow junior administrators to apply, which means they perhaps don't need previous experience. Because otherwise, if actually you want someone with more experience, how do people get experience unless you let them apply for junior administrative posts? If this is about the fact that you don't want to sift through all of the applications because you're going to get hundreds of applications, that's just being lazy, that's unethical. No.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I did actually. For my client, I was going to advertise a position for HR specialist role. And from the job description that I made itself, I need somebody who doesn't have that much of an experience. Because again, I'm having like small budget toward this position. So what I mentioned in the advertisement that I need somebody who maximum have 3 years experience. So it's either you are a fresh graduate who have a bachelor degree in HR, or if you have like 1 to 2 years in HR and you want to apply for this post, you will understand that the budget for that post would be suitable for you. If you have more than 3 years of experience, you still can apply, but I'm pretty sure that your salary will be much higher than what we are having as a budget for this role. So this is just, I'm giving you an indirect message that I'm not going to pay you as much as you are getting paid right now. What do you think?
You'd say advertise the wage.
Until we have like a legislation that force us to write it down the post, I don't think that my employer is willing to do that. Neither the majority of the employers that we are having here. But by the way, we just had like a new rule that is coming in place that would force organizations to put like a budget inside the post of any jobs. And it is coming shortly, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it's part of transparency. How can you expect somebody to apply for a job unless they know what they're going to be paid for it?
By the way, when I did my first sifting, initial call with the employee, with the candidates, I mentioned to them that, listen, the starting point of the salary would be this number. If you are okay with it, we would continue. If you are getting much, much higher than this number, I just wanted to let you know. And some of them already said that, well, we are receiving like 500 riyals plus on what you have mentioned. So is there a way to negotiate the salary? And I told them yes. we can negotiate salary, but if you are willing to continue this conversation, I would be more than happy to do it. And they give me the okay, or they would tell me to, masalama.
I think, I think the point is that actually when we're advertising jobs, best practice would say that actually we need to be transparent in what the requirements are, in terms of what the role is, what the requirements of the role are, and also what the remuneration is. That obviously is one of those things that is context specific, and not, well, that's not going to be the case in all areas, and not possible all the time. But ideally, that would be the case. So I would say that in your case, yeah, absolutely, you want to be making sure that it's clear what people would be paid. But if that's not possible, then yes, I think it's reasonable to provide some explanation of the expected level of experience, and also the activities of the job. It's the job description, which is really, if the job description is aligned to expectations of the role, then there shouldn't be too much. You shouldn't need to say have 3 years or no experience. That should be clear. Okay, should we have a look at another one? Let's look at number 7. We are offering this position on a full-time basis only.
Depends on the nature of the job. Depends on the nature of the job. The nature of the job itself in the job description or the job advert should be visible to others that this really requires somebody who is working like in a full-time capacity, not as a part-time or let's say even remotely, because it depends. It depends on the nature of the job itself. If you're talking about, let's say, for example, a technician in construction organization or electrical engineer in construction organization, this would be ultimately like a full-time job that you need to be on the site doing your job. You cannot do it in a part-time unless it is, again, the role itself. We have like a lot of people who are full-timers and we need to bring an extra, but we are not willing to pay as a full-timer. We would mention that we need somebody who is a part-timer to work in this capacity.
So within the context of the good work paper, and also within the context of making sure that people have an opportunity of a work-life balance, there are very few jobs, I would say, that are absolutely required to be full-time. They could be job shares, they could be part-time, they could be full-time hours over a condensed week. There are lots of flexibility. There are some that are positions of full-time, absolutely full-time only, but there needs to be a justification as to why. It shouldn't just be the expectation.
The position of a CEO, for example, a CFO, CHRO, HR director, whatever, any, let's say, C-suite level jobs. Wouldn't it be obvious that this kind of jobs is a full-time job? Do I have to explain why it should be a full-time job?
I think for something as senior as that, it would be a challenge to find, if you're going to the open market, it would be a challenge to find 2 people of a very similar experience and ability that could co-work on it. It would be a full-time post. Whether or not you could do that as a job share, I don't know. I would still think that it is something that could be considered by an organisation. So for example, it's quite a common thing on job adverts in the UK to have things like, we may consider this on a job share or part-time basis. And that literally just means we'll consider it. If we get a proposal from 2 people and they're both brilliant and one of them wants to work 2 days a week and one of them wants to work 3 days a week, great. But actually, this is a full-time job. So but if you've got an alternative suggestion, we will consider it, and we will consider it reasonably. It will be given reasonable consideration.
what if I don't have a reasonable adjustment or reasonable consideration or reasonable policies or work environment that would allow me to bring part-timers or any kind of other ways of doing a job into my organization up until I make, let's say, certain policies that would help me to support that.
But the
kind of
point about
employment.
reasonable, Mutada, is it's as much for the employee to come up with the solution. So if I wanted to go and work in a university and the contract was 40 hours a week, but I only wanted to work part-time, it's for me to propose to them that I would work 10 hours a day for 4 days.
Okay.
They haven't got to do anything differently. All I've got to do, I've got to say, I will condense my week into 4 days. However, if there is an emergency on the 5th day and you need me in the office, I will come in. Or, you know, actually that it's not necessarily for the organisation to be the one that changes everything, but it is for the organisation to reasonably consider it.
I get your point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
your point.
So let's have a look at another one.
By the way, everybody, you're
HR
still asleep or?
Sorry?
I don't think any of them are ethical.
Okay, well, what about this one?
Which one? Number one?
Number eight. We ask both male and female applicants who will look after your children when they are unwell. Is that justified?
No, not at all.
Ultimately, it is not justified.
No, it's.
If I look into it from the other
You
side,
cannot ever ask any applicant about their children.
That is
That you
so
can't even ask them.
inappropriate.
Yeah, you can't
I
ask them if
know.
they've got children, if they want children, if they've ever seen a children.
listen, I totally agree with you. I understand you. But again, if you're doing like a critical thinking, which is what you are asking us to do all of the time, from the employer point of view, they just want to make sure that the work just continue. There is no disconnection
No.
between the employee and the work itself. However, this does not justify, let me finish. This does not justify asking this question because it is a racist question.
It would be considered illegal in the UK as under the discrimination. Yeah, under
Yes.
But it because it's discriminating against, or potentially it is discriminating against people with children, saying you're going to take time off if your children are unwell. The simple thing is when it comes to employing people, certainly there are, you can't ask them things about their personal life. It is not to do with the job. You can only ask them questions about whether or not they are competent to complete the job. I think the only one here that I would say sort of maybe
Is 3 actually.
sorry, Claude, is what?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Question 3.
Yeah, exactly that. Is question 3.
Cabin.
My little add-on to the end of it would be because we're unable to make reasonable adjustments. I mean, without the context, it's hard to know, isn't it? I mean, I can understand for safety.
Yeah. I work in the airline, so we definitely have a height requirement by the law for cabin crew.
Yeah, gotcha. That'll be why then. Yeah.
But not that.
But other
at
than
all.
that, no. Yeah. Okay, so there are a range of kind of ethical questions for you to consider. Before we finish, I have included on a number of links on here of additional. I think I've looked at most of these. Changing contours of fairness, yes. Perspectives on ethical workplace decision making, ethics at work. Oh, the ethics at work and employer's guide is another one which is worth going through. It's got lots of nice examples, and it phrases them as red flags and what to do. So they are really good examples to work through and would be brilliant for you to reflect on for your evidence base for this module, for this unit rather. You can, I bet you there will be examples that you'll go, oh, actually, yeah, that happened to me. So in that ethics at work and employers guide, there's lots of red flag examples, so you can link through to those and consider those and think them through. Okay. Okay. So we have we've looked at all 4 assessment criteria. I've given you plenty of reading to get on with. There is more reading which is within the extended study guide. Examples of a few papers that are pretty good and that are worth looking at. And I would suggest that you have start with CIPD, go through those, and then, you know, once you've started gathering your evidence, you might want to then dip into some more of the suggested areas for CPD. But a lot of those suggested areas for CPD on the enhanced study guide are there for things to do after this program has finished. So they're not things I expect you to be able to implement right now, but they are things that you might want to look at in the future. For those of you that are already heavily involved in ethics and almost the legal side of it, they're areas that you may well want to say, actually, I'm already doing those. So these are now things that I want to start championing or role modeling or rolling out to my team. Okay.
Thank you.
We'll stop there. Thank you for your attendance and engagement. And as always, I'm here if you've got any questions or queries. And we'll see you all soon.
Thanks a lot, Madeline. By the way, the recording for this session would be available through the Learning Hub, or you will send it through email?
It will be, yeah, be available through the Learning Hub. It will go onto the YouTube channel. So if you are, once you've gone onto the YouTube channel once, I think you can subscribe to it, and then you should be able to see all of them. But it will also go onto the Hub, yes. Even this particular one? Even this particular one, it'll go up. It'll go up probably. I've got today's and tomorrow's, so it will probably go up Wednesday, Thursday, sometime on Wednesday or Thursday. Brilliant. Thanks a lot.
Madeline, I do have a question.
Yeah.
Are we running any refresh session for the employment relations? Because I couldn't find any videos of previous sessions.
Employment relations, the whole unit.
The whole unit or the refresh sessions? Any plans for?
No, not because that's a completely different unit, Khalid. So I won't be. I'm not doing that unit at all. There may. I don't know if there are any additional sessions planned for that one. Best thing is to drop Jonathan a line on that.
Okay, because I was trying to find the link to Jonathan calendar, but I couldn't find it.
I don't know if he has one as handily as me. You're probably best just that's me. I'm a control person, and I like to just get things booked in my diary. If it's not in my diary, it doesn't happen. Jonathan's a more loose and free. If you drop him an email, he will get back to you straight away and book you in.
Okay, thanks.
Madeline, I'm
All
from
right, wonderful.
another cohort. Sorry, I just have a question. So when is this? When will the actual questions be released for this module?
Yeah, just learning at the end of your learning journey. So once you've done all other units.
Okay.
Yeah. So once you've done all the other units and you've completed your learning plan, you've completed your journal and your portfolio notes, they've been signed off by me, then I will give you the questions that you need to do for your submission.
Okay. So is there a format of the journal shared already? Because I missed that.
Yeah, no problem. It is. It's on the Learner Hub.
Okay.
It is the workbook. It's the unit workbook, and it's in there.
Okay. And the learning plan as well, format?
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, no problem.
Thanks a lot,
Thanks,
Madeline.
then.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Take care. Bye. Bye. Bye.